Hello and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour. My name is Drax de Dupré. We are on summer break. Joe is meshing about in 1920s Berlin, and I'm putting together reruns. I'm sorry about that, but those are fascinating conversations, and a lot of people haven't heard those. Okay, so keep that in mind, folks. If you're just joining this Drax Files Radio Hour weekly take on Second Life, VR, maybe a little bit of augmented reality too in the future, you're welcome that we play these gems. And today we're playing a conversation with Jackie Olive, who's the director of a documentary that is almost done. It's called Always in Season, and it's about lynching, the terrible history of lynching of African Americans as a sort of a spectacle in this country, in the United States. There was a Second Life component that was prototyped a while back, and Jackie's actually has started a campaign to raise the rest of the funds that she needs to complete the film. She's been showing a shorter version of the film around the country, and the campaign money will also contribute to an immersive media component to the documentary. So that's a conversation with Jackie Olive coming right up. Why am I so out of breath? Well, because I'm outside in the real world today, outside of the basement. I'm seeing trees, real trees. I hope I'm not gonna bump into them unless they're non-physical, because I am here in San Francisco on Battery Street. And as you're listening to this, you have already seen the episode 30 of the Drax Files World Maker series with Mei Li O, which I will premiere as I'm taping this introduction. Hello? Hi? No, I can't. Oh, are you talking to me? Some guy came up to me and said, some guy just came out of the Linden Lab office and said, can you pay my parking for me? And I said, no, of course not. Anyway, so as you're listening to this, you have already seen, hopefully, the Mei Li O episode number 30, which I'm premiering today at the Linden Lab headquarters at their all hands on deck lunch. And I will talk a little bit about the amazing things Second Life residents do and how important community is in this world. So that's what's happening a half hour from now. But you guys enjoy the conversation with Jackie Olive, director of Always in Season, a fabulous film. And at the end of the interview, I'll give information about how to pledge for this film, how to throw her some bucks to finish this film, which is almost done, and get this immersive component, this Second Life component off the ground as well. Enjoy.
Always in Season is a documentary that looks at the lingering impact of almost a century of lynching African Americans. And so I film in 3 communities where lynchings happened, following the stories of relatives of the perpetrators and victims who are coming together with other folks in the community to look at how they can find justice and reconciliation. And
there was one lynching at the center of the film?
In Monroe, Georgia, which is like half an hour outside of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And when did that take place?
In 1946, July 25th, 1946. And every year they reenact that lynching around that date, around the 25th of July, annually for the last 10 years.
Did you talk for the film with people who were present at that time too?
No, I've talked with relatives of the victims who were alive at the time. And I've also talked with a woman, Olivia Taylor, who's one of the main people featured in the film, who actually witnessed a lynching when she was 3. And so her father was part of the Klan and a leader in that area at that time. And she has a lot to say. There's a lot of really vivid, very detailed stories that are horrific and also really fascinating, in that you get a really unusually intimate look at what it's like to be a child who grows up in the Klan. One of the things that she talks about is how her father stored a cross that they used to use for cross burnings in her closet, and it was lit with Christmas lights. And so there's that kind of really interesting combination of, again, like this horror of the brutality that she was keenly aware of, and also the innocence of her childhood that you can hear in her voice when she's talking about it.
So she was aware of that brutality and that it is just fundamentally wrong at an early age. Is that what she expresses?
She was. She said that she knew instinctively that something was wrong, but she couldn't do anything about it. So she actually didn't even talk about it. As a matter of fact, it was kind of policy for the Klan that children couldn't talk about being in the Klan or that their family was in the Klan. So she didn't talk about any of that brutality well into her adulthood. And so she carries a lot of guilt and pain because of it.
Do you have any other people in the documentary who came to a conclusion that what they were engaged with was wrong at maybe a later stage in life?
I'm thinking Monroe. No. I'm thinking Duluth. No. And I'm thinking Lawrence. No. Mm-hmm. No.
Mm-mm. Me as an immigrant to this country, a privileged white immigrant, and we'll talk about this later, hopefully a little bit more in depth. I was, when I met you at Bayvac and working on this project with the Second Life component, I was really not aware how late actually lynchings actually did happen. So how late did they actually happen?
So the story in Monroe happened in 1946. And so that's why I chose that, aside from the fact that it's really dramatic footage, the reenactments. But I also liked the fact that it highlights the fact that lynchings happened. That was my mother's generation. So that was just a generation ago. But they also, the last documented lynching, the last brutality, the brutal murder that's actually called a lynching was in 1980. And it was the lynching of a young man in Mobile, Alabama, which is just 40 miles from where I live right now. I believe his name is Michael McDonald.
When you say, again, with the reenactment, so is it like an outdoor theater performance of some kind where then somebody steps in and says, no, this is wrong? And how does it unfold and how does it end? Is there a good ending to it?
The best parallel is that it's similar to Confederate War reenactments. So it's a lot more organic and grassroots than outdoor theater, but it does have the same level of drama and it has the same level of intention. And so the town doesn't reenact it. It's actually a group of people, multiracial group of people that come out of Atlanta, because most people in the town of Monroe don't like the reenactments and don't want to have anything to do with it.
That was my next question. I mean, how do they feel?
Yeah, it's very controversial for a number of reasons. I think mostly because people don't like that level of brutality reflected back at them.
Maybe people just want to kind of push stuff under the rug.
Most people don't want to confront it. Most people have issues with the facts. And so there's this question in my film about generational memory versus documentation and facts. And so what actually is the truth about what happened when there's this level of denial that happened immediately after lynchings. And so all that information was cut off. And so Black people in that community and relatives of the victim argue for one thing, and it's one of the things that's highlighted in the lynching reenactment, is that one of the victims, Dorothy Malcolm, was pregnant and that they cut the baby from her stomach. And so a lot of people will say that that's too brutal and there's no information or no documentation that that was the case. But when coroners came to collect the body, and reporters came, and reporters who have reported in the past about lynchings not to talk about it, have told the community not to talk about it. So it's very unlikely that they would have documented any of that information anyway. People think that that's so grotesque that it must be made up, but there's actually a lynching of Mary Turner where that happened, where she was pregnant and the baby was cut out of her stomach. So that's happened before in history. And so the controversy is around the facts and also the level of brutality. But people reenact Confederate War reenactments all the time. And people died by the thousands, and that was much more bloody event.
I don't know, it seems grotesque to me to argue about the level of brutality while hanging a person is, I mean, it's brutal in its own right. It's like, yeah, it's kind of 20% brutal, which is fine. But if you go over the 22%, then that's wrong. I mean, isn't that bizarre?
It is bizarre. And the thing is, one of the things that really made me want to, people often ask, why am I looking at lynchings of African Americans? And I always say, first of all, is that they're my people. Secondly, that the level of brutality that victims of lynchings who were African American had to deal with, had to be subjected to, was unparalleled. And so during this period of the film that I'm looking at between about 1882 to 1964, when there were more than 5,000 lynchings. The lynchings weren't just a hanging, not that that's not brutal enough, but they were often tortured, mutilated, and photographed over a period of hours.
And then the postcards were sent around as a kind of a token of, I don't know what, like I've been at this event and I'm proud of it, kind of insanity.
It was a show of power. The question about whether or not those facts or those details were factual, I think is really second to the fact that these lynchings happened and it was brutal. And so to not talk about it at all because it might not have been as brutal, I think is really a ridiculous argument.
How many people showed up on average or on these specific ones?
Well, in Lawrence, South Carolina, which is one of the communities where we're featuring, and also in Duluth, Minnesota, the estimate is that about 2,000 people showed up at both of those lynchings. In Monroe, Georgia, they were Klans members. And people often think that lynchings happen in the backwoods by the Klan. That's actually a rarity. Most often lynchings happened in the middle of day, in broad daylight, by ordinary men. And in this case, there's suggested that there was a woman who was involved with this lynching. Totally socially accepted. And so at this lynching in Monroe in particular, there were about probably 20 to 50 people there, depending on the information, the source of your information. But people also think that lynchings were spontaneous, and they were at times very planned and very organized. So there would be flyers sent out, telegram invitation to a lynching, which you'll see in the film, and people would send notes to schools excusing their children to attend, and reserve excursion trains for people to come out of town for lynchings. And so that's the essence of the title, is that they were so organized and they were so brutal that they were akin to the sport of hunting, and Black people were always in season.
The reason why I wanted to interview you, apart from that this is such an awesome, fascinating project, is that we met at the Bay Area Video Coalition, and there was a Second Life component to this that we kind of prototyped and put into a little promotional film. And let me ask you, because I remember this so vividly, that there was a lot of concern also coming from Tony Walsh, who's a great game designer and a very early Second Life enthusiast, and he was very much against using an open environment like Second Life to make an interactive component to your film. And I was kind of against it, but he made very good arguments. He said, people are going to come in, they're going to go nuts, they're going to play KKK, let's say, or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciated that argument because it's true. And you don't want to re-victimize a people who've already experienced trauma around lynching. And so I try to be really sensitive to that. That's why this Second Life environment, once we get it up and running, will be facilitated. Let me just say that the Second Life project is about replicating a lynching in a virtual space where it's safe to do that, and people can be open and really can be anonymous in a way that means that I don't just simply say I wouldn't have done that at the time, but I can actually see what I would have done in an anonymous, safe space. And so the idea is that the crowd, the visitors, monitor each other, and that there's some monitoring and oversight and maintenance on my part as a producer.
So you have to kind of monitor this, and then people will also monitor each other. But people could, if they wanted to, feel how it was if you were in the position of the, what is the appropriate term, the henchman or the
lyncher. The lyncher.
It enables me to go in there and actually play that role as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the features, it's a role-playing environment, and one of the features is that if you're playing the role of a victim, then you have to reverse roles and play the role of a lyncher. And if you're playing the role of a lyncher, then you must see what it's like from the victim's perspective, and also from the spectators in the crowd. One of the key things about this project is that people get to be a part of the lynch mob, not for some spectacle reason, but to understand those choices and circumstances that brought ordinary people out to lynchings when they may not have come, when they may have just heard the noise and been attracted to that environment, or when they may have been very intentionally coming to cheer on the lyncher. They can understand what those choices are that can escalate or de-escalate violence. And so you get the opportunity to save the victim's life, or you get the opportunity to see what those behaviors are that you can engage in or that you choose to engage in that might mean costing the victim's life.
And that is really the power. I mean, there is nothing as powerful as a virtual world where you can inhabit these different roles. I mean, not only different roles within a system or within society or a town, but also a different gender, maybe a different ethnicity.
Yes. Yeah. It was one of the things that made me really excited when I was working with you guys, because I hadn't anticipated that aspect, that you're so anonymous, that it really is a matter of what you will instinctually do in that situation. You get to see on much more of an experiential level the kind of things that you would do in a mob.
Second Life is only semi-anonymous in the sense that when you get identified, or when you identify yourself with your avatar and you go in and you're part of the Second Life culture, like for example, if I would go in as Drax Dupre and I would then play the lyncher, and then my name tag is over my head, although I look different, I'm very well associated with my name, so it's actually me doing it. So I would have to go in, I guess, with an undercover alt. Or maybe it would be even more powerful for me to go in as myself, because to me, my avatar is me. For me, it would have an incredible impact, and I would probably be very, very shaken, because to me, this is very real.
Yeah, I think it's one of the beauties of it is that you have the choice. You can even go into the mob and not take an active role. You can just simply stand back and be a spectator. The other thing that we offer is a tour. To help facilitate the experience so that you get a full sense of the context of the environment and that history.
Yeah, you're bringing in the real world into the virtual world with the with photographs and films and historical material that you have. There's always this debate, and again, this is in concept, and I hope you get all the funding ducks in a row so that it really comes to fruition, because the interactivity of Second Life today and what Linden Lab is cooking up with the next version is so much more advanced than what was possible in 2009 when we worked on it, 2010. But now here's always and not only with Second Life, but there's always this preaching to the choir kind of thing. Now, and the same was true with Virtual Guantanamo that Noni made. Now, if I have this gigantic virtual universe when I come home from work, why would I go into a replica or a reenactment of this terrible thing versus going on to a beach with a bikini?
I think a lot of people are like me. They're interested in social issues. So when I was in Second Life regularly, I gravitated more to I like to call this an edusocial space. So more of an educational social space, an environment that's not completely controlled, not feeling like a game, but where I can learn and I can also have diverse experiences. And so I think this is just one of the many really valuable experiences that you can have in Second Life. The plan is to make the film available in universities and colleges. And so there's the opportunity then for college students who may already be taking courses in Second Life to also share this experience. And so there's a natural connection between the subject matter and what people are already doing in Second Life.
Tell me about, from your point of view as a documentary filmmaker, it's also really split. You saw that at BAVEC with some folks who are very resistant to any type of social media component to their films. They're very kind of, let's just call it old school for lack of a better word. I want to have this shown on PBS, and then I'm going to be happy and I can drink my champagne and that's it. While, of course, the Second Life component to your film is obviously extending it, is making it available 24/7, is engaging in a dialogue, in a two-way street. As good as a documentary film is, it can never be that two-way street all the way through. What would you say to these filmmakers that are that want the old model back?
Yeah, I understand. I remember that, actually. And I'll have to say that the film industry has actually gotten a lot more open to transmedia. And, that's the term of the day. But the idea is that you have these extensions on digital media platforms for storytelling. And I think that definitely since 2010, there's been a lot more embracing of the idea and the kind of not it doesn't it broadens your audience, but it also gives you a lot more flexibility in telling a story that even film can give, which is the exciting thing about me. It gives much more of an experience, virtual world in particular. And I still hear those conversations, but my estimation is about 5% of my colleagues I talk to about it.
So when the Second Life component to your film will go live, is it planned to, and we discussed this also back at BAVEC, do you think it's necessary to have additional materials, for example, to disseminate this after the fact when a class goes in, for example? I think that's what we had discussed, and to me that always made sense, that there has to be maybe some sort of questionnaire or some sort of task to write an essay about your experience, so that it just doesn't stand alone and you're just left with all that.
I think definitely something along the lines of educational modules that we put together for films, so that classrooms can understand films and the themes and the material, particularly if it's a social issue-driven subject, I think is necessary for Second Life. And definitely machinima, the work that you do is really powerful in explaining the project and the process.
That's what the kids could do. Now I'm thinking, let's say you go in there with a school class, and then everyone is tasked maybe to interview someone that played some other part, and then make a machinima of it. Could be very short, but basically a profile of someone else who talks in character, how their experience was.
Oh, I love that idea. It's perfect.
Yeah, because then you really, you disseminate the experience.
In the process of creating the machinima, then they get to process a lot of really heavy information that they just got through understanding, and then showing their perspective, which I think is really powerful.
What's the biggest obstacle to making a documentary film today in America?
I think you know what that is, Drax. It's funding.
Yeah.
Funding.
It's not gotten any better.
Yeah, it is for me. If I were independently wealthy, then it'd be a breeze. But I like to say too, I just had this conversation. I've been screening the film a lot lately, the work in progress of the film, because we're still in post-production. But if I had been given the money that I needed, roughly $300,000 to $400,000, I've been working on this project for 5 years. If I had been given it 4 years ago, it would have been a very different film. And so the value of that is that I get to live with the story and I get a deeper understanding of the story. The downside is that, I have to continue to fundraise.
Wow, so that's tremendous patience. So but when you say work in progress, is the general narrative ready to go, or is there still also footage that you want to shoot that you think needs to be shot or inserted? Or
yeah, so we've finished principal filming. We'll probably have to do some follow-up interviews, but we've finished most of the shooting and have just started to edit. And so I'm really working on raising the money again to do an assembly cut, to start an assembly cut, and then hopefully have a rough cut around February, March.
Let me ask you again, going back to Second Life now, when the film is then fully done, when it's fully financed and you're fully done, what does your ideal Second Life project look? If you could summarize that, and listeners will have seen, because I posted on the blog, will have seen the thing that we did at BAVEC, so it kind of describes what is happening. But what is your ideal sort of wish list? What should happen in the Second Life component?
The space will be a replica of Marion, Indiana. And so I chose Marion, Indiana because there were two men lynched there by the name of Smith and Shipp, their last name, young men, 19, 20, 21 or so. And there was a third child, I was going to say man, but he was really a child, 16-year-old James Cameron, who they were trying to lynch, and they had the rope around his neck. And the only thing that saved his life was that someone stepped forward and said that he was innocent. And so that saved his life. He was, of course, then incarcerated for 5 years, and it totally changed the trajectory of his life. He went on to live until he was 92. And he passed away a year before I started researching this project. And so I've always been fascinated with that story and about how one act of courage and one act of dissent can save a life. James Cameron went on to be president of the NAACP in his state and opened the Black Holocaust Museum. And so he was a wonderful man. And the idea is that you step into Main Street, Marion, Indiana, where the lynching happened in the middle of the courthouse square, and become one of the participants. And so you're either one of the crowd of thousands that were there, gathered there for that lynching, or you're the lyncher, or you're one of the victims. In that process, ideally, with funding, you'll have that experience, and you'll again understand what those choices and circumstances are that brought people out, and that escalated the situation. And then you'll also be able to do things like go to websites so that you can see other resources on the information on issues like restorative justice, on issues of racism and how to stop racism and hatred, and all of those kind of related issues of bullying, of homophobia, that kind of thing.
Now, Second Life 2.0, we've been talking about it on the podcast. Linden Lab is very quietly working on Second Life 2, which will be just like Second Life, but better. And you will actually, maybe there will be a possibility to actually have a concurrency of avatars of maybe thousands or maybe more. That's been rumored. Would then the experience, do you envision it to be open 24/7? To maybe walk around in the town? I always envisioned also non-player characters maybe being there, or other people who play regular townspeople. My co-host Joe Yardley runs 1920s Berlin, and there's only one non-player character who is the streetcar driver. But the technology is moving so fast, it might be actually feasible to have non-player characters around so that it's always populated. Maybe they talk with people, like a fully vibrant place, either with non-player characters or people who would like to role play there, or greeters who are in certain roles, maybe even the shopkeeper or whoever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely visualize it as a vibrant environment, and one that where you can take a tour and it's facilitated with a host, or you can roam around on your own if you'd like. But the idea, and also there'll be Autobots in the crowd, right? And so once you're in the lynch mob, and there could be an Autobot sheriff that steps next to you and say, okay, here's the key to the jail. And then you have to make the choice about what you want to do with it. Or just someone to prod you to say, step forward and let's go get him. And whether you step forward or not then determines whether or not the lynching is carried out. And so there's that kind of random environment. I think that's really great because it most accurately represents the real world. And also people can come in and they can play roles, but the idea is that it's facilitated. Plan is to partner with the university to maintain it. And so that will really depend on the hours that the university is able to do. Then I suspect it won't be 24 hours. I suspect that it will be available for long periods of time.
You're also saying that there should be a live person basically there as a greeter versus fully automated process.
There'll always be a live person there, and they'll be greeting the people as they come in, and you can take a tour with them and maybe a few other people, or you can wander around the space on your own, but it'll be facilitated in some kind of way.
It's just like you said earlier with your film. If somebody would have given you the money back then, it would have been a different film. So in a way, the good thing about the bad thing is that you're maybe learning and maybe you're rewriting or rethinking things in your head. Definitely with the Second Life component, it's a good thing that is not done, because there's so much more possible when you add the other hardware stuff, the Oculus or something, which, it's not necessary. It's icing on the cake, but it adds another component of immersion.
Yeah, the exciting thing is that as the technology evolves, the space can evolve.
Okay, final question. What this project shows is, I don't know, is that a scientific term, the bystander syndrome? Is that even a term?
It's groupthink, like group mentality, I think is the... Mm-hmm.
The fact that, like in the story with James Cameron, that somebody steps forward and then really is able to make people do the right thing and stand up, people who are normally quiet. So you can tie this in and with bullying today, or with in schools or in the workplace. But let's tie this in, please, with what's happening today systemically. Do you have any hope that a film like yours and an experience like this in Second Life has a positive impact on, well, what we have to call the systemic racism in this country? I mean, does media, I guess this is the big question always, does any type of media, a really well-researched and in-depth documentary film, an article, a game, a game for good? What power does it have? Can it change anybody's mind?
Absolutely. I think it's very powerful. I just screened the film, and a guy in the audience, a young white guy who was probably in his 30s, said that he's going back to research his family and to see how his family's story connected with lynching. That's powerful because he could have never known. And then what he does with that could grow. And so in the same way as in Second Life is that once people understand what happened, they understand the dynamics, my hope is that they'll take the lessons from that. And with a lot of, again, it's an educational space. And so with a lot of information about what you can do to create a safe space for people instead of a space of hatred, then you can change your own community.
And that was Jackie Olive, director of the documentary Always in Season. And we're linking on the blog to a proof of concept I did a while ago for the Second Life component of this documentary. Again, I mean, if people who do not work in feature film documentary, I think it's hard to understand sometimes how incredibly painful, tedious, and just really, really long the processes of making those films, of finding the protagonists, keeping with the protagonists, assembling the film, researching, and getting the funding to get it done. So this is not unusual for a film like Jackie's to, she has worked on several years, 5 years, I think, minimum, I'd say, is not unusual. We worked on the Second Life documentary, Log Into Life. I think that was 5 years, started in 2007 and premiered in 2011. So that is actually 4 years. But anyway, so that's the end of the show. We're also linking to the Always in Season Indiegogo campaign. Please throw Jackie a little bit of money if you can. Any amount matters to get the film finished and get it out there. It's such an important topic, this history of lynching and how it reverberates to this very day for me as someone who was not very familiar with American history before I came here. I mean, I learned some stuff in high school, but in Germany, but it's fascinating to kind of draw the line of what happened just 50 years ago and what's happening today. So throw Jackie some money with the Indiegogo campaign. Do it now. I'm driving. You can hear this in the sound. I'm not driving back from Linden Lab. I'm driving back. I don't know. It's all information that you probably are not interested in. But we're not in season, so I can bore you with personal anecdotes rather than hard SL and VR news, which you can get elsewhere. Of course, not with the awesome commentary from Joe and I. But anyway, I'm driving back from an immigration appointment. I had my green card renewed, and I needed to get a stamp and a passport. And of course, like the obsessed evangelist that I guess I am, I'm talking to the immigration officer who is looking at my case about, well, you guess what, about Second Life and about how, you can be sort of a virtual ethnographer and go down there and study cultures. And turns out the guy is an aspiring filmmaker with a degree in communication and media. And I give him my card and say, please befriend me in World and I'll give you a tour. And so, I don't know, Linden Lab, where's my commission? You get commission for these online ads, but shouldn't I get a commit, or should anybody not get a commission for like real life conversion if we can prove that we converted a guy, just like the Jehovah's Witnesses get? I don't know what they're getting. Must be a comparable thing. So guys, please research what does a Jehovah's Witness get when they can prove that they converted someone. All right, that's it for the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Always really excited about getting feedback from this show, and and from the video series, and just having chats in world. Don't hesitate to contact me. Okay? Have a great weekend. Bye.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Leap Motion, Stitcher, Fateware by Damien Fate, Giza Creations, Arrows Avatars, Maven Homes, Mad Bee Productions, Bot Girls Identity Circus, Ison, Caravel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Loki Elliott, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Fallen Gods Incorporated, What's Next, Abra Animations, Blue Moon Enterprises, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar, Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.